Hey, what's going on? I'm
What's up?
here
What's
with
up?
with Nick Polk. No Keith today. We're live on our YouTube channel for the Choircast Network YouTube channel, and in the Heresy After Hours group, and on my page and on Keith's page. And but Keith's not here because he's preaching on Sunday. I don't know what this guy does.
Preacher
I don't
guy.
know.
What's
Preacher
up with
guy,
that?
Pastor Masters. Yeah, I don't attend church, so here we are at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. To talk a little shit, maybe talk a little shit. I don't know.
Ooh, yes, please. Yes,
So
please.
introduce yourself to those who don't know.
Hey, everybody. My name's Nick, and I run a Substack called Tolkien Pop, where I just talk a little. I've been venturing into the podcast realm as well, but I
Oh,
talk
good,
just about the intersections of pop culture and Tolkien and how that impacts the world. Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and I love Tolkien. So other people love Tolkien too, and I can't understand how they interpret Tolkien. So we're here to talk about that. I'm always like shocked when I find out the things certain people enjoy. Like Peter Thiel.
Oh, of course. Oh, yes.
He's also a Tolkien fan and a Girardian, so he's read extensively Rene Girard, and then to use mimetic theory to apply it and be the type of person that he is. Like I mean, if it wasn't so damaging, it would just be interesting to talk about like how certain people. It's like the Bible, though. Like you read it a certain way, and you come to like opposite ends of the spectrum on how you're supposed to live your life as a fucking human being.
Yeah, it's weird because I remember even as I was looking into this with a friend about like just the hard right weird tech bros and JD Vance's connection to it, and then
Hmm.
I was like, okay, of course they love Lord of the Rings. This sucks. And then
Right.
they were like, oh, we love mimetic theory, and I was like, oh god, dude,
Right.
why?
Why? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, like it's like like again, it gives us something to talk about. But I just wonder, like, because I mean, you can have like anything. Like I have not criticisms of Tolkien necessarily, but like I understand how there can be like, I can see how you can find maybe some prejudices in him. Maybe like
Totally
he doesn't have the healthiest view of women, right? Like
right.
representation is really important these days. And if we apply that to him, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's that funny meme of like where it's like every time two women speak in the Lord of the Rings together, and it's the whole movie's like 1 second long.
Yes.
Um, so there, I mean, like any writer, there's no one's inerrant and infallible. Um, but how do we get someone like who reads it and obviously it's important to them, and then they're like, "Oh, I'll call my company Palantir." It's like, "Wait, did you miss what? Like what? What are you doing?" Like, it's like naming your company Mordor LLC and then being serious, not ironically, like not tongue in cheek.
I mean, that's it's like recently with the South Park stuff, right? Like Cartman is literally Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk's like, "This is awesome that I'm Cartman," and I'm like, "No, that's like the whole thing. Like that's
Right.
the
Like, why do you
issue,
think you're in on the joke? You're not in on the joke, dude. Like,
right?"
wh what is happening? So, yeah, in spite of, like, I think one of the, and you'll, probably agree with me on this, it's pretty not like, I mean, it's pretty common. Like, one of the themes of The Lord of the Rings is like, what happens when you take power? Right? Like,
Right.
if we had to be super reductive, like the ring represents like a desire for power, or can represent that. And we see like a character like Boromir, who with the best of intentions is like, hey, we can do this, use this for good. And I think the story would be like, well, not so fast, right? Like maybe even the kings of old who become ring wraiths might think, oh, we could use this for good, and they're going to end up like a ring wraith, right? Like,
Right.
and yet JD Vance comes along and it seems like, oh no, I'll take the ring and I'll I'll do whatever I got to do to get to the top, one breath away from the presidency.
Yeah. And it's using like the the industry of technology as like a catalyst into that world, which is also just very anti Tolkienian, right? Only not only is it like don't grab power because it'll corrupt you, but also if you use mechanistic power to achieve it, it's like another level of just
Hmm.
heinous evil, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Say more about that.
So JD Vance for that, because you brought up Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel, for those who don't know, is a venture capitalist. He's really into a bunch of tech stuff. He's got everything from surveillance technology companies to military stuff that
Mhm.
bombs, you know, small towns
And
and
and he originally, like, started PayPal, right? Is that correct? I think it's PayPal.
yeah, PayPal guy.
Yeah.
Um, Lifelong Lord of the Rings fan, and he came, he lectures at different Ivy League universities, business programs, and JD Vance, while he was at Yale, heard him and was like, "I love this guy." Started working for him, and then JD Vance got involved in the tech world, started his own tech company, which kind of led him into power and stuff. But yeah, so there that whole Silicon Valley tech bro thing that has evolved into like an Elon Musk esque, fascism.
Mhm.
Yeah, JD Vance is on there, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, Lord of the Rings was a big part of why I decided to do that," and
Mhm.
it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like, I mean, when you first crack open The Lord of the Rings, and he talking Tolkien's talking about hobbits, right? Like, and of which Tolkien considered himself among, in hobbit like, right? Like the way I do. Like, I mean, he has a love for trees and plain food and tilled earth, though I do no till farming. I mean, me and Tolkien, I guess, can disagree on that. Um, but you open it up right there, and it's like that. And a part of, in the preface of The Lord of the Rings, uh, he even explicitly states, like, the hobbits are kind of anti-mechanized anything.
Right.
And then I think it gets kind of contrasted with, like, the mechanization and the gears of war from Saruman using the forest itself to fuel that. I don't know how you miss those themes. Like, are we reading the same book?
Right. And even Tolkien's own, like you said, connecting it to, what's going on with how JD Vance and Peter Thiel understand Tolkien. It's clear that they don't. But Tolkien explains the different types of magic, right? He's like, there's the good magic, right? Kind of
Mhm,
like the one with the earth. The elves are doing stuff, right? They're
mhm,
they're trying to enhance the natural world for the betterment of everybody. Obviously they're imperfect beings, but the other type of magic is what Tolkien calls mechanism.
mhm,
Yeah, Doa, on the comments there, read Lord of the Rings, read Tolkien. But yeah, so he talks about how um, the worst kind of magic is mechanist because it's used to dominate and impose
mhm.
control. And obviously, with JD Vance and all of those tech guys, and of course being in the Trump administration now and the Heritage Foundation and all of that Project 25 stuff, that's their whole thing, is to dominate and control
Do you think
under
they're
the
lying
yeah,
about do you think they're, like, I know we impose ourselves onto the text no matter what we're reading,
right.
but sometimes it's, like, so absurd that, are they just I mean, if we had to guess, are they just grifting? They don't believe any of this shit? Or do they, like, do they at least know, like, if you could sit down with JD Vance and had a candid conversation, no cameras, just you and him, and he could be honest, and you're like, "Hey, you'll have a memory zapper at the end, so he doesn't have to worry about you talking." If he
Yeah.
could be honest with you and have that conversation, do you think he would recognize what he's doing? Like, he knows he's not reading Tolkien fairly.
I think for Van, I think honestly, I would give Peter Thiel is the grifter. I would say
Uh-huh.
there's another guy named Curtis Yarvin, which we can talk about at later, because JD Vance and Peter Thiel are devotees of Curtis Yarvin, who also is a Lord of the Rings fan and a fascist. Um, but I think JD Vance, mixed with his very conservative nationalistic Catholicism,
Mhm.
is very unawarely revisionist in the way
Mm.
it reads stuff. Like, and it's not for conservative Catholics who lean that way. Not all conservative Catholics, but conservative Catholics that like Trump and Vance.
Mhm.
Most of their stuff is entirely revisionist.
Mhm.
Shakespeare, is Catholic and very, that way. He's a cultural icon for Catholic, establishment of a nation. Chesterton, Tolkien, and even C.S. Lewis gets kind of co-opted into that. So I think JD Vance genuinely believes what
Mm,
he's saying, and I don't think he's grifting. And I think he's
mm,
just, it's his religious upbringing and viewpoint that I think is skewing um, his ability to even just realize how he's reading Tolkien.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wonder when people are so. I mean, it's not like I'm sitting here and saying like I'm the arbiter of how to read something, and it's certainly like I don't want to like say I have it cornered, but it just seems like some things so like when you like if you think about the Bible and the way the Bible's read too, it's like yeah, there's plenty of things I could be wrong about that, but some things do seem clear for the people who do say the Bible clearly says. It's just not the things they say it is. Like it's like love love your neighbor as yourself. God is love. Like those things are pretty explicit. Like yeah, we all kind of agree on those. And then they're like they go to like the really wonky verses and they're like, no, God's really against gay people because this one word that Paul made up. It's like, wait a second. Now you want to say it's clear? No, come on. Like it confounds me. Like I don't understand. Like I wonder how he would interpret Boromir. I wonder how he would interpret Fangorn Forest fighting back against Saruman. Like I wonder how he would envision like he like this administration is so power like hungry
Right.
and like the best characters from Tolkien's Legendarium, especially the Lord of the Rings, are like humble hobbits and like people who mind their own goddamn business.
Yeah.
I mean, some hobbits don't, but incidentally, like the ones that don't, introduced into Ivy Bush right off the start, they're the ones who are like judgmental. They're the ones who are like modern hobbits would be like homophobic and bigoted and xenophobic, and like those are the types of hobbits. And it's like,
They're
what?
the ones that join Saruman too, right?
Right?
Sandyman,
Yes.
right? They're the ones, and they eventually
Right.
realize their mistake. But they, like you said,
Right.
exactly. They're the ones who are like, oh, this cultural, nonsense and blah blah blah. And then Saruman comes along, and they're like, this guy's speaking to what we're talking about. And then
Right.
they're trapped. Yeah,
And they're trapped. Right. And then they're right into that. It is this power over thing, but it's so absurd. It's like trying to say you should dominate your garden. It's like, that's the way they interpret like Genesis. Like, we're supposed to dominate. We're supposed to have power over it. And it's like, I've never dominated a tomato plant. Like, it doesn't make sense.
put on your leather boots.
Yeah,
Yeah. Your
yeah.
fishnet in your whip. Yeah.
So who's the other guy you mentioned? I never heard of him before.
So Curtis Yarvin
That guy.
is a weird tech bro who is now been a reactionary blogger on the internet since like the early
Okay.
2000s.
Uh,
So he is a pseudo intellectual. He loves Tolkien, and he basically believes that democracy needs to be supplanted by what he calls like monarchical what he calls like a king slash CEO. So
uh,
democracy should go away. It should be ruled by a quote unquote benevolent CEO, which for him is totally caught up in class and racial structures. So
uh,
he's like, and JD Vance and Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel has funded a shit ton of Curtis Yarvin's like venture capitalism as well as his own like writings and political endeavors. And JD Vance cites Curtis Yarvin as a big influence on his own thinking. And Curtis Yarvin takes, like you're talking about, if you want to take somebody and you're like, this is definitely not how you read Tolkien and how you did
mhm.
this, who knows? Curtis Yarvin creates this like analogical hierarchy with the races of Tolkien's Legendarium and then applies them to our
Oh,
world.
Christ.
And so, of course, the liberal, elites are the elves. Okay, very weird. Normal middle class Americans are hobbits, and then everybody else who's poor and not on the racial hierarchy are zombies, dwarves, and orcs. Right, and those are like the most racialized
Uh,
stereotype typical issues like in the Lord of the Rings themselves.
right. Sure.
And then he says there's people like him, the billionaires, the rich people with the great ideas. They're the dark elves who are coming to supplant the regular elves, the liberal elites, so that they can turn everyone into hobbits. It's very strange and
Oh,
fever dream like. So anyway, uh, and he is notorious for saying the N word on the internet all the time
oh,
now.
of
So
course. Wow.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
What a like Tolkien explicitly states that this is not an allegory. Like, why are we making an analogy? Why are we making an allegory out of anything Tolkien's doing here? Like
I
that
think
wouldn't
that
even make
people
sense to
don't
begin
they
with.
ignore it. It's like the scripture thing you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
I talk to people and try to talk to them in good faith and give them a chance about like they're like, "Oh, I read the Bible literally." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And
Mhm.
like you were talking about, so the literal Genesis story, Noah's Ark is literal. All right, I'll
Yeah.
give it to you. What about selling everything, right? All of these things. And they're like,
Right.
well, that's, it's different. And I'm like, so you're picking and choosing, and they can't
Yeah.
see it. And I think the same thing happens with Lord of the Rings, that they're like, oh, all these progressives and, the woke left have hijacked Tolkien, and, you know, Rings of Power has made elves black or whatever. And then you're like, okay, cool. So you calling yourself like the elite dark elves saving people. They're like, no, 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 that's legitimate. You're the
Yeah.
ones who are this, and you're like, it's just pure cognitive dissonance. They don't even see it, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, it's frustrating. Um, it's just it leaves like, I mean, it's just it doesn't seem genuine to me. Like, I think we have to approach anything with a little bit of skepticism, but also curiosity. Like, and they just seems like, nope, there's none of that. I'd be curious, switching gears a little bit, but not really, um, because masculinity gets brought up a lot when it comes to like the woke left versus like alpha males and beta liberals,
Right.
and when you come to Tolkien's male characters, which unfortunately, are dominate rather than having so many women. But that's a conversation maybe for another time. The male characters are not what the conservative right calls alpha mass. I mean, they recite poetry and they cry,
Right.
and I'm gonna guess they would go to therapy if it was presented to them. I mean, they know old stories, and they sit around campfires and sing songs and recite poems. Um, where did they? I mean, how do they miss that?
Yeah. I don't know if they just miss it, or they've so twisted Tolkien into like this caricature of a warrior for Western culture, which obviously
Right.
includes like knighthood and alpha maledom or whatever you want to call it. And I think part of it too gets lost in like the movies as well. Now, the first movie, Aragorn is that kind of book reflection, except he's a little more insecure.
Mhm.
But I think later on in the Two Towers and Return of the King, the male warriors kind of embody that kind of badass sort of
Mhm.
action movie persona. And so
Sure.
I think there's a sort of merging that happens
Mhm.
with those. And then of course, when you just all your entire goal as a thinker, as a political figure, is to dominate and change the cultural landscape to fit your own notion of what these things are, you're going to do the same thing for your source material or
Mhm.
fandoms like Lord of the Rings. And so, like you said, if you read the books, though, like none of the male characters who are good guys fit
Mhm.
the alpha maledom dominant
Yeah.
um caricature, and there's a
Well,
lot
yeah.
of yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, which itself is such a misnomer because the guys who say the loudest are like in an air conditioned room, like you and I are right now, talking into a microphone. I'm pretty sure Aragorn, when he was a ranger, was out in the wilderness looking pretty gnarly, and probably had some pretty gnarly skills that these guys who clamor for alpha male, probably don't have.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is totally like in a different, but you and I are like married, we're happy, right? All these things.
Yeah.
And you get all these neck bearded single weirdos who are
Mhm.
like, you're a beta male. And I'm like, I am
Right.
literally embodying the like a
Right.
realm of masculinity that you haven't achieved yet. I don't
Mhm.
understand what's happening here.
Right.
Which is it's just a construction, really, right? We know this, but it's
Right.
just like you said, it's just it's very ironic and weird that they say that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, it's like, yeah, we're the ones who don't. We're not the ones who care about it, but they
Right.
do. And then they don't stack up to their own standard because they'd be out
No.
there chopping wood without a shirt. They'd be fucking building houses out of logs and shit. Like, let's. I mean, what are you talking? What are you talking to a microphone for with makeup on? I don't have any makeup on today, but the if you got a bigger show and you're on TV, you got makeup on, bro. Like, that's not very
Right.
alpha.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it is interesting and weird. But I think for those who are not familiar with Tolkien, there is a ton of like queer blogs and queer fans and scholars now that
Hmm.
have been particularly looking at gender um, uh, expressions in the Lord of the Rings
Hmm.
and really seeing how Tolkien does not paint these black and white pictures of gender and how uh, it's just more nuanced, just like everything else is.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he stands the test of time unless he's nuanced. Like,
Right.
I mean, everyone's a product of their time for sure, but like, I think at the same time, you could have these universal things that we could talk about now, we could talk about in 100 years. And if he's like cuz this modern incarnation of quote unquote conservatism, which I don't even consider conservative.
No,
It's certainly not the conservatism of Tolkien.
no.
Um this is a really tiny slice of, I mean, like these modern evangelicals, right wingers, like they look at their movement as if it's like historic Christianity or this is historic conservatism. It's nothing like that. And so we're gonna have to have they're gonna have to realize they're gonna have to have much more nuanced conversations about all these things. Um, Outside of Lord of the Rings too, just any conversation they have, it's just always so binary, it's always so rigid, and I don't
Right.
think any story like Tolkien's survives 50, 100, 150, 200 years into the future with that rigidity.
Yeah. Well, and this is outside of his legendarium. It's more about his personal beliefs, but I think this is where the kind of broad s- like paint strokes that Tolkien has, where that's that wiggle room that people can kind of explore his work in a way
Mhm.
that's very um I don't know the right word I'm looking for, but multiple people can approach it and come away with different things and it's like valid.
Yeah.
But one of the things, especially that conservatives and even more like libertarian conservative minded people latch on for Tolkien. Tolkien said one time about his political beliefs, he was like, I'm like a monarchical anarchist.
Right,
People are
right.
like, how can that be right compatible? And Tolkien
Yeah,
says basically there should be a benevolent king. His ideal is obviously Christ because he's a Roman Catholic. And he
right.
says there would be a benevolent king that would basically be on a throne, provide everything for everybody, and then would fuck off. Right. He's like, and then everyone could just do whatever the hell they wanted. And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I guess. And so people hear that, especially on the right, the new
Mhm.
right, and even more libertarian minded. And they're like, that's what I like. Yeah, an anarchism where there's no institutions, no centralized government, etc. But we want a benevolent ruler and we get to decide who that is. And
Mhm.
instead of letting people do what they want, it's a top down, imposition of values. So
Yeah.
it really is just taking stuff and creating like a complete farce uh of what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they become a walking contradiction because these are the same people who were, like, so libertarian minded that's like, "Don't tread on me."
Right.
Okay, but you're treading on literally every other fucking person who's not like you, and don't you
Right.
see how that, I mean, it's like they kinda want the laissez-faire of the Shire, but then they also want, like a really, really big hobbit to tell everyone else what to do. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense.
Yeah. It's weird that like I think there's many people who
Or
can
maybe an
talk about
orange hobbit, I should say.
an orange hobbit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. A really wrinkly one. Yeah. I don't know I don't even know what type of species hobbit he would be, an ugly one.
Whatever Sandyman was.
Yeah. 100%. Whatever Sandyman is. Yeah. um, but like I said, it's not conservative anymore. Like
No.
tariffs, when you're not decentralizing things, you're literally taxing the fuck out of everyone.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you're using it to fund institutions that, so you're not decentralizing power. You're not
No.
eliminating things. Like, even when you bring Elon Musk with this chainsaw, like, you're literally not cutting anything
No.
except
No,
social
it's
programs.
yeah, I mean, it's a bastardization of what even like the conservatism I'm not a part of. Like there's still things that I'm conservative about. People are always like, they just assume I'm like some like way left. And I don't even know if maybe I am in many ways. But also I'm like, yeah, I mean, in theory, I think a balanced budget might be right. I don't know. I try to balance
Right.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I'm not an economist. So I'm sure there's good forms of debt and bad forms of debt. But generally speaking, like I think the budget should be balanced. I'd like to not be the world's police force. I'd rather not have some huge military spent, that's like a goddamn $1 trillion a year, whatever. Um, I'm for all those sort of like I think like old school conservative libertarianish ideas. Like they make sense to me,
Right.
but so I don't even know how they don't see the fact that like what they say they believe, well, it doesn't even line up with those ideals anymore. Not even close.
No.
Not even fucking close.
No, and I've read there's a Catholic Tolkien scholar named Bradley Birzer. He's a historian, and unfortunately, he's very right wing. But he's more like I'll give him some consistency because he's denounced Vance and Trump and all of those dudes, and he's like, they're not embodying any like real, true conservative political
Mhm.
ideology or any real Catholic ideology that lines
Right.
up with any of our social teachings.
No.
And I'm like, okay, respect. And so I ended up reading some of like you said, reading some of those early 20th century conservatives and libertarians, and you're like, and for me, I'm like a democratic socialist, and I'm like, some of this kind
Yeah.
of sounds like democratic socialism.
Right.
And
Right.
at one
Exactly.
point, those ideal like those philosophers and economists of those days, they were like, yeah, I'd actually rather hang out and work with socialists than with fundamentalist Christians. They
Exactly.
specifically cite them because they know
Yeah.
that's not, they want fascism. They don't want uh fair systems. They don't want
No.
conservatism. They don't want a lack of decentralized power. They want power. They
They
want
want
to those
power.
that right.
They want power, and it's like, man, that's the one thing. Like, if you just come into Lord of the Rings, like even just watching the movies, you've never seen them. I mean, most people have, but or if you read the books, you're like, man, give me two takeaways. It's like you got to renounce power. That's number one. Like, I mean, there's a million things we could take away from it, but it's like, yeah, that definitely don't reach for power. And it reminds me of like the desert scene with Jesus and the devil offers Jesus religious and political power, and he's like, "Fuck off, man!" Like, and then the JD Vances of the world, they got those two things: they love Tolkien and they love the Bible, and it's like, okay, but where do you think this ends? Where do you think this ends for power? Like name me one fascist regime that has stayed in power forever.
Well, and that's kind of, it's reflected, the reality of real life fascists and dictators throughout the years reflect Tolkien's own sketch of what happens to evil, right?
Hmm.
Evil eats itself, right?
Yeah,
You look at
yeah, say more.
what happened to Hitler. There was
Yeah.
political top-down power, it fell apart, right? Stalin's regime, right? It fell
Hmm.
apart.
Hmm.
Mussolini's whole thing fell apart internally before, other war outside external forces came in. And that's what happens with Sauron too, right? And even like Saruman became an ally of Sauron, and he
Hmm.
immediately starts undercutting Sauron to get
Hmm.
more power, right?
Hmm.
And for me, there's a hope there where there's still going to be large forms of destruction and death, and that's just been true of our world forever. Um, but that evil will do what it does. Powerful evil will eat itself, and I'll
Mhm.
give an example of how this is probably going to happen if these weird tech dudes win for a time. So the Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, JD Vance, they all hang out, but they have three distinct visions that other
Mhm.
journalists and people who study them have found. Curtis Yarvin believes in like the benevolent CEO ruler. Okay. Peter Thiel believes that there's like billionaire classes that can go and hide, basically almost like Fallout. If people are familiar with that,
Yeah.
destroy the world while they hang out in a bunker.
Right.
I remember people have watched the show and they're like, "That's not realistic. How would they even make money?" And I'm like, I don't. It doesn't matter. They're literally trying to do this. Like Peter Thiel has
Yeah.
decided. He's like, let's. He's like, whatever. We'll have Fallout, and I'll live in a bunker with a bunch of billionaires.
Mhm.
Um, and then JD Vance comes along with another. I can't remember. His last name is Diener, but he's a philosopher at Notre Dame who's also a Catholic, Roman Catholic nationalist. And so then JD Vance and this Diener guy believe in sort of eliminating democracy and
Patrick, is it
establishing.
Patrick Diener or
That's
Dean?
it.
Yeah, Deenan.
Right.
Deneen? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Patrick Deneen, Patrick Diener,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he they want to eliminate democracy and establish a sort of Catholic social order that's
Mm.
based on not anything that Pope Francis or Pope Leo has talked about, but more in line with sort of the conservative fascists. But there are three distinct visions that they can't exist together, right? Those
Mhm.
three things are not compatible. And if they win, there's going to be conflict. And I think that it'll topple over and make way for new people.
Yeah.
But who knows?
There's hope in that. I mean, and I mean, fascism and authoritarianism in general is really it's really expensive and it's really bloated and it takes a lot
Right.
of resources and like just to do anything, like you could watch Star Wars and see that. Like it's like you have this you must have a huge budget. You got a lot of work, people working, you got a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, a lot of egos. Um You know, the least surprising thing in the history of the world was Elon Musk and Donald Trump having a fallout. Like, you talk about 2
Right.
narcissists in a fucking room. I mean, shit's gonna go sideways quick. So, yeah, there's hope there. I mean, is it a fool's hope? But we take whatever hope we can get.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you do to maintain your own peace in this day and age?
It really is
I
just
know that's taking the conversation a little different, but you know, with so many crazy news cycles, like we got to find some. I think Tolkien would want us to also find our own little slice of the Shire on the day to day, so we don't go crazy.
yeah. I mean, we have to remember too that Tolkien was writing this stuff in the midst of World War II, right?
Right.
Hitler was like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally what Hitler's the worst person alive. You know, it's
Right.
Hitler.
Yeah. It's Hitler.
And his son was in the Royal Air Force to fight against the Nazis. So
Hmm.
Tolkien was going, and Tolkien himself was in World War One,
Right.
and so he knows war, he knows devastation, he knows the threat of fascism and authoritarianism, and he still explored stories and wrote. And I know you're familiar with this, Matt, but for others, he wrote an essay called "On Fairy Stories," basically
Hmm.
defending the genre of fantasy.
Hmm.
And he talks about one of the main key elements that a good fantasy story needs is a good aesthetic of escape. That means that people want to return to these fantasy worlds, because the worlds in them feel more restful than the one that we are currently in.
Hmm.
Um, and he calls it escape, and he juxtaposes it with the understanding of like the escape of the deserter, right? He's like, no, we're not just running to fantasy stories because we want to ignore these problems,
Hmm.
but it's because of these problems that were human made, right? That are you telling me that a jail cell is more real than the beautiful realm of Rivendell or the
Hmm.
Shire? Like that can't be true, right? And so I think for me, that's what I have to do is and then Tolkien says when you escape, after you return into your realm, you're supposed to almost feel a sense of renewal to
Hmm.
approach the day again with hope and vigor to actualize a better world.
Hmm.
And I try to do the same thing. I try to return to Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's world. But you know, even trying to do it doesn't just have to be fantasy. It can be I know you got a book coming out on The Office, right? It can be The Office. It could be
Mhm.
religion. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. I'm gonna have to ponder that. Is How can we say that the inside of a jail cell is any more real than the Shire?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're there for unjust reasons, especially, you know,
Yeah.
how can this be more real than this thing that, like, some people like myself are total nerds, and I know you feel this too. Like, you kind of model your life out of certain things that I mean, and fiction does a great job of that. It can do better than nonfiction, I think. I think it can stir empathy in us a lot more. It can cause a lot of great things, and so we get lost in these world, but again, not just to escape and full stop, but to give us a sense of wonder and, like, a sense of hope and renewed energy, to face whatever jail cell we might be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was talking to somebody about this because stories, in a sense, and Tolkien probably would have argued this. He would say it probably almost all the time. It has better the the better ability to help us understand the world better and actualize something better than just like nonfiction or philosophy or theology or
Sure.
something. But I was talking to a friend who was like, man, I talk about all this pop culture stuff and I
Mhm.
feel inadequate to address the issues of the day because I don't know philosophy or super nerdy metaphysics or whatever.
Mhm.
And I had to tell him, I was like, dude, people speak the language of stories. There are
Yeah.
very few people who speak the language of Girard or
Yeah.
Hegel or,
Yeah. Right.
Whitehead, whoever, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but people understand. We were particularly talking about like Thor and the MCU, but people
Mhm.
understand Loki, right? The god of stories, if people have
Right.
seen Loki.
Yeah.
um and it gives us hope too. I mean, that's what, like, I mean, my fandoms, I tell people all the time, it's Lord of the Rings, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer person, and then of
Okay.
course South Park. Those are like my big four.
Have
You
you
know, and
have you been with South Park for a long time? So this is all.
oh yeah, huge
Oh,
dude.
so these new episodes, you're just loving it, huh?
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah, lifelong South Park dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Um, yeah. And so my daughter has gotten, like, as nerdy about Star Wars as I've gotten about Tolkien.
Hell yeah.
Um, like deep cut shit, like comic book stuff. And, like, she's like, no, this is why 7, 8, and 9 don't fit, and blah blah. I'm like, okay, all right, calm down. You're just getting started on this journey. Hit the brakes a few times. But I've been sucked into Star Wars even more, and I've always been a fan of Star Wars, so I've gotten sucked into that. And The Last of Us is definitely in there. Like, that world is just I got to get out of it though after this book that I'm writing because it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's unrelenting, dude. It's like, goddamn. I even say in the book that I'm writing on The Last of Us, I was like, I don't even know if I want a part three. Like, the games are probably some of the best games ever, like, just as far as gameplay, but, like, I don't know if I want another story. I don't know.
Because it's pretty
I
bleak, right?
bl
Like the ending is like very gray and it's
It's
like
fucked.
kind of hopeful, but like not at
The
all.
whole thing's fucked, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I sucked myself into this fucking world, man. But, sometimes The Lord of the Rings is like that too, you know? It's like, some of those old stories, some of the Silmarillion, some of the stuff in there, it's like, it's pretty dark, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of
And I think
suffering.
that's what, no, it's great. I think that, and I think that's one of the issues that we see with far right assimilations of Tolkien is that they're like, oh yeah, it's black and white, right? It's evil against good. And you're like, okay, fine, sure. But characters aren't black and white. One of the things too that
Yeah.
I see in Tolkien scholarship and fandom is that they take Tolkien out of context. Surprise, surprise. They proof text everything. Is that there's a thing that Tolkien says in particular where he says the Lord of the Rings is about God's sole right to honor because Sauron is basically fighting Iluvatar. And they're like,
Mhm.
that's the reason it's Satan against, God. It's like that's an aspect of it. But Tolkien also says it's about death, right? It's
Mhm.
about what happens when people live a long time, what happens when the elves are immortal, right?
Mhm.
And he was exploring that. So you have to pick and choose to believe in black and white. And like you said, Tolkien's characters are morally gray. Boromir is like the prime example, right?
Yeah.
And he's a hero at the end of the day. Um, but he fucks up, right? And even some of
Yeah.
other characters, Theoden is very honorable. He fucks up too.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And yeah, like even Gandalf reminds Frodo, like, don't be so quick to deal out death and judgment. When they're talking about Gollum, we think, oh, Gollum's the bad guy. It's like, no, no. If you're like, is Gollum evil? I mean, sure, I guess, right? Like, but I mean, Christ, he's not like the embodiment of evil. He can't be reduced that way. Like, he also got scapegoated, right? Like, he got kicked
totally.
out of his community. Like, like there was something even it's not so black, it's not black and white. We can't reduce it down to that. We just can't.
Yeah. And that
I
black
mean,
and white, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead, keep going.
I was just gonna say Sam's my favorite character. But I do like to ask the question rhetorically, like, well, what if Sam was a little kinder to Gollum? Like, Gollum probably was still lost, sure, but we can't be sure. I mean, we can't be
Right.
certain, you
Yeah.
know?
When Tolkien himself talks about, he literally cried while writing Sam, basically sending Gollum over the edge away
Mhm.
from redemption. Right. He
Yeah.
literally cried tears because he was like, this is it, and it led to a great ending of this, the story, and it needed to happen, I guess. But like even Tolkien, it emotionally wrecked him that
Mhm.
somebody who had the potential to be redeemed uh didn't get redeemed in his story, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Man, where do we go from here? Doa Deer likes that question. How the fuck do we deal with this? I don't know how I think we got to get, I think we, the more I think about things, like, we have to be very communal with our community.
totally.
We have to be engaged with the people that live on our back end.
Yeah, fellowship. Yeah, we should totally talk about fellowship because we talked about the individual escapism part, but
Yeah.
I mean that's how the Gandalf's whole job is to organize and bring the free peoples of Middle Earth together to combat Sauron, right?
Yeah.
And in order to do that is through friendship.
Mhm.
It's not creating means of ends, right? Gandalf doesn't
Yeah.
go, "Hey, you're a tool. Go over there and die and be my like our shield wall, so we can do some
Mhm.
stuff." He builds relationships with the elves, with
Mhm.
the rangers, with the hobbits, right?
Yeah.
With the dwarves, and it leads to them coming together to do something about it. And one of the things too that I find interesting and upsetting about this kind of new right movement is that they use um the language of populism, which in and of itself, I don't know, like you said, it's populism leads to fascism usually.
It
It's
seems
it's
to.
yeah, it's not real community.
Mhm.
And so they keep using Vance, and all these other people keep using the language of the common good, which
Uh-huh.
is co-opted from Catholic social teaching and Christian, virtues and shit like that. But what they mean is populism, so that we can control people's emotions and then
Mhm.
impose something from the top down, as opposed to what happens in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think the difficult part, especially when it comes to, like, now people who are more progressive, who have deconstructed, who've been through the church and church hurt and all that shit, like, you do get stripped of that in many ways, like, or you, at least you feel like you do. Now,
Totally.
it's not completely accurate, but, um, like, I mean, I don't know if I'd ever step foot in a church and to be a member ever again. I know my wife wouldn't. So then it's like, where do you find this common out? Where do you find group? But there's lots of groups out there. There's LGBTQ groups. There's um all sorts of shit out there. It's just, I think the perception is that, like, the right has certain things on lockdown, like church fellowship, for some reason economic policy, which is crazy,
Yeah.
and family values, which is also now crazy. Like, it's like we think of those as synonymous with the right, patriotism itself. It seemed like they've hijacked it, but it's all of that is just, I don't know. It's not real. They don't have a right to claim that any more than they have a right to claim Tolkien.
Right. Mm, no, I love that. It's the ostrich. I don't how do I talk?
Yeah.
Ostracization. There we
Civilization. Yeah,
go.
I can never say that word either.
Yeah. Is, for sure it's imposed, right? It comes from it's externally imposed upon us, and it causes real damage. But like you said, when we get to that point where we deconstruct, and if we when we build community and hear that we're not alone, I feel like there's a sort of like resistance that you build against that attempt where you're like, dude, I don't care what you say. I've been through this shit before and it's completely fake. And the only reason it had power over me was because I let it have power over me and I let
Mhm.
it determine my whole identity. Right. And then
Yeah.
when that identity was stripped away from me because of hypocrisy or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
you know, it, I don't know that I'm kind of just, I'm kind of just musing here about my own deconstructive experience where we have to find ways to create community and kind of retake some of these things because I think we have, as more progressive people, become allergic to stuff like that
Yeah.
because it has been co-opted. If you hear someone
Mhm.
go, if you see an American flag on someone's house,
Right.
generally you're like, that person probably voted for Trump,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it's weird. It's weird.
It's
Like,
weird.
this country doesn't belong to you, right? Like,
Right.
like nationalism is complex and patriotism or whatever, but we all live here. We're all citizens. Like,
Right.
this is my home too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Doa Deer has a question. Is there any clues in the books about how to have fellowship with MAGA types if you're like me, can barely look at the Christians that kicked me out of their church? Um, the first word that came to mind is pity.
Yeah,
You know
100%.
it's like, I mean, I think of certain family members or people in my wife's family. I'm like, I mean, I definitely have moments where I'm angry or moments where I'm all that, but ultimately it's like, and it's not pity as like a condescending thing. It's just like, no,
Right.
I truly pity a life led like that. A so closed off life. I pity people like that because you are missing out on all of life. Like, um, but that's the only thing that came to mind for me. I don't know if there's like fellowship, true fellowship with people like that. I don't know at this point.
I think pity is a good word because Tolkien meant it differently, right? And you were talking about that, right? Pity for Tolkien wasn't condescension, like, oh,
Right.
poor you. It was,
Right.
oh, somebody is literally having this lack, right? And I
Mhm.
want to. It's almost like empathy, right?
Mhm.
It's closer to empathy than it is actual pity in the way we mean it now. But I
Yeah.
think of this example in the books, for Doa. If you haven't read them, if you've seen the movies, there's no spoilers here really. But at some point, Gandalf confronts Saruman after the battle at Helm's Deep.
Mhm.
And Saruman is totally trying to use his magic and his power to manipulate people to get them back on his side. And Gandalf breaks the power by laughing at him, by like, your power is a joke, buddy. But he then says, like, come with us. Like, let's figure this shit out, man. Like, you clearly look where you are right now. You're not in any position to negotiate. Let's figure this out. What a better life we can have.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, Saruman digs his own grave, right? Because he rejects that.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of embodying Gandalf's pity to talk to people like that in good faith. It's
Mhm.
really difficult. And if it gets to the point where they're not willing to compromise, I mean, you just kind of have to let them go, right? And
Yeah.
then whatever happens, they'll have their worm tongue moment, right?
Yeah.
Metaphorically.
Yeah. If we had to make an analogy and an allegory, I know Tolkien must be rolling in his grave. JD Vance does seem like a worm tongue type almost. Like it's kind of like you're
Yeah.
like lurking around there and at some point you can't help but think, man, like Saruman's whoever you're following, if you want to make the analogy, he's gonna lose his power. Like you're gonna, I mean, maybe JD Vance thinks he's gonna be the next guy, but like I don't know. It just seems like, what's that line about, like, there's only one Lord of the Ring and he doesn't share power?
Hmm.
Um, I just can't help but think, like, no matter who the top dog is, if you're in that hierarchical power over top down approach, A, everyone's coming for you. And B, if you're coming for someone else, they're not sharing power with you. Power can't be
Right.
shared.
Nope.
So no matter where you are in your life, whether you're Green Wormtongue right now, or whether you're Saruman later, it's always, it lacks community, true community. Like, MAGA is not a community. They're a
No.
bunch of angry individuals. But it's not true community, and they will cannibalize themselves.
Yeah. It's a mob. Yeah, for sure.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Doe's got a question here, or maybe just a comment. I think somehow we need to at least have spaces where those questioning their MAGA worldview cannot feel ridiculed and hated for the things we can pity them for. Yeah,
Yep.
I think this is a hard balance too, because you got to have your own boundaries too and what you can personally take. And I can't deal with their bullshit right now. But I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want them to be ridiculed per se. Like, I hope we haven't, like, I feel like we haven't ridiculed people like JD Vance so much here, but you gotta be honest about shit though.
Yeah. If it gets to a point where like being around people like that, whether it's online or in person or family or friends, and it's causing you like legitimate distress at the
Right.
very least, right? Harm, mental harm. Yeah, you gotta. It's not worth it at that point for your
No.
own safety, right?
Yeah.
And there's, I think it's more. This is where the community comes in, right? I try to talk to like I have queer friends, right? And we, that are like, I can't talk to these people because they literally don't want me to exist. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, fair. Like, of course. And as like a cis het guy who I look the part, right? I get people who are like, Trump, my guy, am I right? And I'm like, I don't know, absolutely not, right? But it gives me an opportunity to talk because generally I'm safe.
Yeah.
Um, and I can try to talk to people. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not, I don't know. There's no perfect
Yeah.
answer.
No, there
There's no perfect answer.
definitely not. Now, yeah, you gotta know your own limits, you gotta know your own strengths, you gotta know yourself, you gotta know what you can handle. Um, and yeah, it is a balance, like, it's a balance when it comes to racism, when it comes to homophobia, like,
Right.
definitely you don't wanna always be the straight white guy who's, like, at the front leading the charge on everything, 'cause then it's all about you.
Right.
But then also it's like sometimes you need to be, because then it's like, nah, black folks have said they're tired right now. So someone, like, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. They're gonna find their joy. Like,
Right.
black women especially came through at this last election. Like, we failed them. you know,
Right.
you know. So, well, this has been fun, Nick. I think I don't know. There's no answer at the end of all of it. Sometimes it's just like there's not a one size fits all answer to any of this.
Yeah. No, and isn't that the beauty of story though?
Yeah.
Like, like we have story has the conflict, right? As well
Hmm.
as hopefully the happy ending or the moments of joy.
Yeah.
And if everything was fixed, then it wouldn't be a story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good to remember. That's how I've it's almost become my theodicy, is like, well, I mean, it doesn't justify suffering, I guess, or validate it, but it's like it'd be kind of a boring story if, like, everything was if we were all just angels.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so I think I need to when's the last time you sat down and read Lord of the Rings?
It was probably last year, I think.
Okay.
Last year
Yeah,
was
it's
when
been a
I
while
read
for
it.
me. I feel
Yeah.
like I need to get out of the sort of, like, commenting on it and just, like, sit down and read it just to enjoy it again.
Yeah. I've been trying to enter different worlds because I have been spending a lot like I got to a point where like 4 years in a row I read Lord of the Rings all the way
Uh-huh.
through.
Yeah.
And then people were like, "Hey, Lord of the Rings is awesome, and I know it's your Bible and shit, but like there's other stuff out there." And I
There's
was
actually
like,
other
"That's true."
authors out there.
Right.
Like,
So I've been trying
yeah,
to diversify.
yeah. I don't need all of my references to be Lord of the Rings references.
Right.
I started making fun of myself in writing. Like, I know I'm making another reference and another parallel here, and I'm using it as an example, but fuck, I don't know. I read Lord of the Rings just like you, like way too many times from too many, like, it was like I read nothing else. And then what I did read was like nonfiction on Tolkien.
Right. Well, and it's
Or-
I remember I quote Anchorman all the fucking time. You know, it's almost
yeah.
like that too. Stop
Yeah.
regurgitating Anchorman in Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
quotes. I don't know. Maybe I
I
will.
did that with the Office for goddamn us the whole decade.
You have to. That's what Office fans do.
Yeah, I know. I know. Which is great. I mean, are you excited about the reboot, the paper?
I've seen it come out, so I will say I've only seen the first 3 seasons of The Office in its
Oh, okay.
entirety, and so
All
I
right.
haven't been through the whole thing. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like some of those things don't land like when it's like 10 years later. I mean, it's like Happy Gilmore too. It's like, okay, cool, you made all those references to Happy Gilmore, but that my love for like old movies like that is like a part of like being a millennial. Like I grew up at that time and I watched it at that time. So I know you're trying to, you know, play off of that, but I don't know.
it's yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Kind of lives back then, and that's kind of the fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate y'all listening. Nick, I always appreciate your time. You got
Thanks for
anything?
having me, man. This is
I
so
know
fun.
you're over on Substack at Tolkien Pop. Any other projects you're doing?
No, not currently. Yeah, just
Cool.
Tolkien Pop, really, uh, pouring my time into that.
Cool. Do your last comment. I love people who can laugh at themselves. You got to. Can you imagine Trump ever laughing at himself? Oh my god, I do pity such people. Yeah, exactly. Like you got to self-deprecate, man. If you're a narcissist, it's probably hard to.
Right.
But that's what makes good comedy. All right. Well, everyone, I would encourage you to go check out Tolkien Pop on Substack, and we'll see y'all next time. Later.